Today on Africa News, at least 170 people have been killed in Nigeria's Kwara state by suspected jihadist fighters. Authorities say more than 143,000 people have been evacuated from flooded areas in Morocco. And the World Food Programme warns of rising hunger amid drought in Kenya. Welcome to Africa News. I'm James Ezimoha. Nigeria's Kwara state is reeling after one of the deadliest attacks this year. At least 170 people were killed when suspected jihadist fighters overran a rural village overnight, prompting fresh vows of a military crackdown from state and federal authorities.
Suspected jihadist fighters killed at least 170 people in an overnight raid on Woro village in Kayama district, central Nigeria, burning shops and killing local vigilantes who attempted to defend the community. The attack highlights worsening insecurity in central Nigeria, where rural communities remain vulnerable despite repeated government pledges to contain extremist violence. The chairman of Kayama, local government, described how vigilantes were overwhelmed during the assault.
The shops by the roadside were all vandalized, were all burnt down. The vigilantes who are seated in their office, numbering about 10, 12 of them, they tried to shoot them, the gun didn't penetrate them, they pushed them into the office and burned those young men into ashes.
Kwara State's governor says a military surge will follow.
They've murdered sleep, and I can assure you that within the next 1 month, the whole place will be flooded with soldiers.
President Bola Tinubu condemned the attack as barbaric, as security forces face renewed pressure to prevent further mass killings across Nigeria's vulnerable rural regions.
The African Union has condemned an attack in Nigeria's Kwara state that killed at least 170 people, calling it a grave violation of human rights. Officials say an armed group linked to Islamic State was behind the attack, but no one has claimed responsibility yet. Tesema Kande has more.
Chairperson of the African Union, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, has called the latest attack an assault to peace and security, adding that it goes against the bloc's policy of zero tolerance for terrorism and violent extremism. The African Union says it is also committed to supporting the Nigerian government in its efforts to defeat all threats. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has ordered the deployment of a battalion of military personnel to Kwara now. The government says the army will ensure the gunmen are arrested and prosecuted. The gunmen launched attacks in the state on Tuesday, killing. Local officials said the attack was carried out after victims refused to join the armed gangs. According to Amnesty International, security lapses led to the attack, with the group claiming that the gunmen had been sending warnings to locals for several months. Several of the victims have now been buried in accordance with Islamic rites. Nigeria has been battling an insurgency since 2009, with kidnapping for ransom payments on the rise too, leading to the displacement of millions. Tassim Akende for A News in Jos.
Morocco is battling severe flooding after weeks of relentless rainfall. Authorities say more than 143,000 people have been evacuated from areas in the country's northwest. Villages in Larach province were inundated after rivers burst their banks, forcing evacuations in Sar El Kabir and neighboring communities as emergency crews continue rescue operations. African governments are cautiously reacting to Washington's latest trade decision. This comes as the United States extends the African Growth and Opportunity Act for just 1 year. While the move preserves duty-free access for dozens of countries, the short timeline has renewed concerns around the continent.
Be a part of this.
After months of uncertainty and tense deliberations, U.S. President Donald Trump has finally signed a new deal allowing the resumption of the U.S. Sub-Saharan Africa Preferential Trade Pact, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA. But contrary to Africa's hopes for a 3-year extension, the agreement will now run just until December 2026.
It's difficult for business to plan for something that's over the next 8 months with the uncertainty of what comes in the next years. But that's something that we'll have to work with the U.S.
The landmark AGOA trade program, in place for more than 25 years, grants over 1,800 products from sub-Saharan Africa duty-free access to the United States, supporting economic growth and job creation across the continent.
It's a helpful instrument for some of our countries like South Africa, where we intend to increase the processing capacity and therefore the capacity to export more finished products.
AGOA negotiations were particularly fraught for South Africa. Pretoria's foreign policy positions placed it in the crosshairs of the Trump administration, and exclusion from the U.S. market would have hit the automotive and agricultural sectors especially hard. With the deal temporarily secure, South Africa now has breathing room to repair relations with Washington. At the same time, South Africa is deepening ties with other global partners.
Regardless of AGOA or any other development, South Africa should be diversifying its economy anyway. We shouldn't have to wait for scrutiny on AGOA before we decide to diversify. And I think this is now a decision that our government and business have taken. We do need to diversify.
Questions over reciprocal tariffs still remain unresolved. South Africa currently faces a 30% duty on certain exports to the United States. But officials are hopeful this can be renegotiated.
In Lesotho, thousands of garment workers are struggling to survive months after losing access to the U.S. market. While Washington has extended AGOA, the relief is limited. For many families, uncertainty still defines daily life.
Lesotho's textile industry has shed jobs after tariff-free access to the U.S. market was disrupted, leaving workers searching daily for casual employment. The sector underpins the country's economy, and prolonged trade uncertainty threatens livelihoods in one of Africa's most export-dependent garment producers. A retrenched factory worker describes the daily struggle.
I have come to this place because I'm looking for a job, since I am a woman who has worked in the textile factories before. So we don't get employment at all in this country. We are told it's because of the issues relating to AGOA. We will only get employment once AGOA has been renewed.
Lesotho's trade minister says more certainty is needed regarding the trade agreement that was extended by the United States for only 1 year.
We have to work today to get the US to provide us with a framework of a proper trade policy for Africa that is going to maybe replace AGOA or fine-tune AGOA.
While the AGOA extension brings short-term relief, workers and officials say lasting solutions are needed to stabilize Lesotho's fragile export economy.
Nigeria's inter-African exports are rising, driven by fuel sales and strong regional demand, but traders face logistical bottlenecks, currency pressures and infrastructural gaps. Analysts say the real test is whether Africa's largest economy can fully seize opportunities under the Continental Free Trade Pact.
Inside this factory in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, a variety of coconut products, spices and packaged foods are produced for export. For years, Kafilat Ayeni shipped mainly to the United States, Canada and the United Kingdom. Last year, she turned to Africa, sending goods to the Gambia, Senegal and Zimbabwe. She expected West Africa to be easier, but it hasn't been.
My experience in selling within West Africa, I think it's more tedious than exporting out of the country. The rigidity of every country not harmonizing their certification as one African country is actually hindering us from having general product acceptability.
Kafilat's experience comes as new figures show Nigeria's exports to Africa are climbing. In the first half of 2025, shipments rose 14% to 4.82 trillion naira. ECOWAS countries bought almost 3 trillion naira worth of goods. Fuel topped the list at about $220 billion. West Africa now absorbs more than 62% of Nigeria's African exports. Still, Africa makes up just 10% of Nigeria's total exports, far behind Europe, Asia, and the Americans. The government says AfCFTA tariff concessions and a new air freight corridor to East Africa could cut shipping costs by up to 75%. For economist Aliu Ilyas, logistics and energy supply remain central to unlocking AfCFTA's promise.
Now, when you say West Africa now, we have to start looking at it from a Nigerian perspective. So I think first thing we must do in West Africa is to have a unification of currency.
Deeper regional integration is also needed for trade to truly accelerate.
We should have a transport system that comprises of rail, road, air, and also pipeline. If you don't have access to energy security, there will not be industrialization.
Authorities say they're working to ease export bottlenecks and expand trade corridors. For exporters, the opportunity is growing. So are the obstacles. The next test would be whether Africa can turn AfCFTA commitments into smoother trade flows and make the continent a bigger destination for its goods.
Nigeria has regained access to global payments platform PayPal after nearly 2 decades of restrictions. The return was made possible through a partnership with local fintech firm Paga. Analysts say the move could ease international payments, boost online commerce, and allow Nigerians to receive foreign funds directly in local currency.
The skills of freelance software developer Abayomi Akinseye are in high demand. He's spent over 7 years building digital tools for clients in Nigeria, India, the United States, and the United Kingdom. But getting paid was often difficult. Bank transfers could take months, and he also lost potential clients who could not pay through the limited channels available to him. Now the return of online payment platform PayPal to Nigeria could reshape his business.
Now that PayPal is functional, we hope to see more clients interface with freelancers like myself to engage more and render services to organizations and individuals in particular.
Global payment company PayPal restricted inbound payments to Nigeria in 2004, citing fraud and compliance concerns. Freelancers and small businesses relied on informal channels or slow and costly bank transfers. Now, through a partnership with homegrown fintech firm Paga, Nigerians can link PayPal accounts to local wallets and receive payments from more than 200 countries and a global network of over 400 million users. For economist Hawa Mustafa, easier access to global payments could strengthen Nigeria's digital trade sector. That matters in a country with millions of young people working in the gig economy.
It means that you can virtually sit everywhere in Nigeria and have an exchange of funds in return for your goods. You send your goods, your exports, and you receive your money almost instantly without delay. And that way it cuts down the delay. So yes, there are jobs opportunities, there are income, additional income opportunities, and there are opportunities to even showcase, the economic integrity of Nigeria.
For Nigeria, PayPal's return restores a direct link to the global payment system. It could make it easier for freelancers, online sellers, and small exporters to get paid and access their earnings locally. But analysts insist long-term impact will depend on strong regulations, cybersecurity, and consumer safeguards to protect both the platforms and the people using them.
Communities in eastern Kenya are once again facing hunger after another failed rainy season. Just months after emerging from a historic drought, Families in Tana River County say livestock losses and rising food prices are pushing them back into crisis.
A failed rainy season has wiped out pasture and livestock in Tana River County, leaving households struggling to access food. Aid agencies warn that climate shocks linked to La Niña are deepening food insecurity, forcing families to sell off remaining assets. Residents impacted by the drought say they need urgent help.
The cows have no milk because they have nothing to eat. There is nothing that we can do. So for a cow to get milk, it needs to eat so that it can produce milk. And it's when we sell the milk in town that we can get food. We are wondering how we can get help.
The World Food Programme says coping strategies are becoming extreme.
We are seeing families really going into emergency coping mechanism, trying to deplete their own livelihood, selling their female goats, going to sell even to the last goat that they have to be able to access food. This huge food gap cannot only be addressed through cash. Food is important because the market are not really functioning well. So by giving food direct to the families, we make sure that they are able to access this much needed food during the dry season. The fallback areas are the areas that do not receive rains. So even the pastoralists have nowhere to go. They have nowhere to go. Usually at this time, they will all migrate to the delta to access pasture and all that. But they can't go there. There is no grass. So they are just within their household.
With rainfall expected to remain uneven, aid agencies warn that food needs in Kenya's arid regions could worsen in the months ahead.
In Sudan, an aid convoy has departed Port Sudan for South Kordofan, where communities have faced restricted access since fighting began in 2023, according to reports. Relief agencies say the delivery could ease suffering for hundreds of thousands and open the door to wider humanitarian operations.
This convoy leaving Port Sudan today marks a breakthrough in a crisis that has left South Kordofan largely cut off from humanitarian assistance since the beginning of the conflict in 2023. For many communities, after months of isolation, it represents the first real sign that help is on the way. The convoy is carrying essential humanitarian supplies, including food assistance, medical kits, and emergency nutrition support. Aid agencies say it's aimed at preventing further deterioration in a region where families have been surviving with extremely limited access to health care and basic goods. Thousands of civilians are expected to benefit in the initial phase, with priority given to vulnerable children, displaced families, and people living in hard-to-reach areas.
The convoy consists of 45 trucks, and each truck carries 50 tons of relief supplies, including food, clothing, and medicine. This is just the start, and we will continue investing in providing assistance. These cities need a great deal of support. This aid is funded by the government of Sudan, and we call on all organizations and donors to provide urgent assistance to the people of South Kordofan. We promise to facilitate its delivery, and they are welcome to come and see for themselves.
Humanitarian groups describe the operation as logistically complex and politically sensitive. After years of siege conditions and restricted access, opening this corridor could set a precedent for sustained aid deliveries if security holds. For residents who have endured isolation, rising hunger, and collapsing services, the convoy is more than symbolic. It's a lifeline and a test of whether humanitarian access can finally be expanded. The international will to help is certainly there, but many potential donors have been skeptical about the process.
We came from Istanbul with our members to visit Sudan in order to see how aid is being delivered and to assess Sudan's specific needs. This mission is important for us. We want to observe the humanitarian work on the ground and prepare a report that we will take back to the organizations under the Union, which are international organizations, not only based in Turkey. We came today to see how humanitarian assistance is being provided in Sudan and how the procedures are being carried out.
If successful, aid workers say This mission could pave the way for regular relief operations, easing pressure on a population that has spent nearly 3 years cut off from consistent assistance.
Well, that's all we have today in African News. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.